Alright, welcome back to the channel. Today I've got a Havoc 40 crack grenade build and gameplay video for you. I'll start off with the talents, I'll explain some weapon choices, and I'll break down some mechanics of the crack grenade just so you can optimize your gameplay. Again, I've got the core build, I've got a couple of tech points that you can change, and I'll explain the best choices in my opinion. But let's get straight into the talent points. Now starting off in the first section, like I've said before, Out for Blood is the single best node in the top section, but as a package of 3 points, I prefer the confirmed kill route. I value close order drills over one motion as a single node. I think confirmed kill and Out for Blood are of same value, and then I value 1 stamina over 5% movement speed. I do think Out for Blood is better than confirmed kill, but in relative value, in practical terms through gameplay, I put them at the same tier. Now, my math may be incorrect, but assuming it's correct, with this build, because of the diminishing returns in damage reduction between close order drills, the 5% node above voice of command, and Iron Will, assuming you're above 75% toughness, that should leave you with 72% approximately. There may be give or take again. I'm not 100% sure on my maths, but I'm pretty sure it's very close to that. It should leave you with a total of approximately 72% damage reduction. I'm purely saying this just so you know it's not additive, it's not 83% plus the 5%. It's still very good, you will still notice it in your games, but there is diminishing returns. So what does that look like now? Iron Resolve gives us 50% damage reduction, or effectively 50% damage taken. Now close order drills up to 33% damage reduction. I'm just going to use the maximum stacks because for effective uptime, you're usually at maximum damage reduction, which then translates to 67% damage taken. Now after you get these values, to my knowledge, and again I could be wrong here, but the talents are multiplicative, so close order drills and Iron Will, whereas the modifier is additive. Now if this is incorrect, please correct me, but this is what I'm going off at the moment. Now after you figured out your damage taken, you multiply your factors, so the X and Y in this case, which would be 50% times 67% damage taken, which leaves us with 0.335 or 33.5% damage taken, or effectively 66.5% damage reduction. And then we add the additive node that I showed you for a total of 71.5% damage reduction. I don't actually know if it rounds up to 72%, but that's where the 72% damage reduction came from. Now again, if this math is wrong, could you please show me in the comments just so I can correct myself? It's going to benefit me and the community. Now going on to Blitz's crack grenade video, build, guide, we're obviously going crack grenades. You don't need Grenade Tinkerer, but with the way you can boost crack grenades with certain builds and setups, I do recommend it, and it's not much of an opportunity cost because it's right under where the crack grenades are anyway. Now in terms of being optimal, we do take Survivalist, especially if you're the only veteran on the team. If you have another veteran with a Survivalist, consider these extra points that you can now use for your build elsewhere. Between Get Back in the Fight and Catch a Breath, since the Mortis Trials update, Catch a Breath is definitely the superior choice now. As long as you haven't blocked or taken damage from a melee attack, there is a lot of uptime. Consider it a more or less constant influx of toughness. Incredibly powerful. If you're taking into Survivalist, don't leave home without it. Survivalist is the best aura. Veteran in current Havoc very much falls between a damage dealing and support class. He can definitely compete at the top damage levels even with new Ogren, but for consistency and the most wins, the most impact that you can bring to your team, I'm definitely going to recommend Survivalist as the best aura. Again, if you have another veteran with Survivalist, save these points to go elsewhere, which I'll explain later. Field Improvision, now with the new buff to ammo scarcity going from 25 to 40% ammo, you now get 2 stacks of grenades from Field Improvision. It was just a straight buff. It was already good in Havoc 1.0, but now it's just even better. It's kind of one of those talents, if you're the only veteran, definitely bring it. If another veteran has it, save the points. But if you're just quick playing into public games like Auric Maelstrom, that's why I'm recommending the Survivalist and the Field Improv. If you go into a Havoc where there's more communication beforehand, that's where you get the opportunity to save these points to put elsewhere. Now, in a Havoc environment, I'm going to be recommending Twin Blast, and I take it in the build in the gameplay that I show at the end. But unless you know how to effectively manipulate the grenades so they don't always attach onto the same enemies to try and get more consistency, because there is an RNG factor to that. Whereas with shredder grenades, it's almost always a positive. There can be some neutral value where 1 and 2 grenades would have been no difference, but there are some things that you can do to try and help negate that. Now, depending on the weapon setup, that's why I consider this a tech point, because you'll get more value with the bolt pistol variant. Whereas if you're using like the plasma or bolt gun where it has the reduced AoE, it's not benefiting from lethal proximity. You can forego this talent point and just be a bit more focused and aware of making sure you're attaching your KRAK grenades to the purple modifiers, because something that I didn't mention is that this is not necessarily a meta build. However, in the current Havoc state, in the purple modifiers, this build has been giving me the most consistent wins. Now, if there is not encroaching gardens, I would still recommend going shredders, absolutely. And if there is no cycle or bubble on the team, I would still recommend going smokes. Now, just touching on that, I do have a 3 meta grenade video, or more or less optimized, I should say, coming out after this. But and here's going back to Twin Blast. Unless you're going the bolt pistol with lethal proximity, which is one of the ways you can help negate when they double up, consider Twin Blast a tech point for KRAK grenades. And remember, this build is designed to have the most success in encroaching gardens, and in other game terms, consider this like an anti-meta build. Oh, it's the purple modifier, now I'll bring out this build. Now, this build will absolutely work in all modifiers, but again, assuming there's no encroaching gardens, you will get more success from other builds, such as a shredder grenade focus build. But specifically in encroaching gardens, I've had the most consistent win rate with this build, and again, it will work for all difficulties and all modifiers, but just so you know and are aware. Demolition stockpile, 1 grenade every 60 seconds. This allows you to let your zealots and ogrins pick up those grenades. Don't leave home without it. You need grenadier with KRAK grenades, because 2 is frankly just not enough if you want to actually play into the potential of KRAK grenades. It's really just as simple as that. 2 is just not enough. So Fat Shark, if you're seeing this, come on, buff KRAK grenades, give them some love. Voice of Command, Duty and Honor, Lemon Toughness. We all know why it's good. We all love it. Again, going into that support but carry elements. Voice of Command definitely leans into that support element. There is a lot of uptime, a lot of impact. Yellow Toughness is great. And because it's just below the grenade tech, there is no opportunity cost. Now, I've showed in my lasgun video of why I think Born Leader is the best. It's always active. Even if you're at 100% toughness, you're always generating toughness in the background through catch a breath, through confirm kill, target down, voice of command. Even if you're not actually visibly getting it on your toughness bar, it is calculating it in the back end and sharing it to your team. And again, I show this in practice in my lasgun video, and it's because of that I think it's far superior to For the Emperor or Keep Their Heads Down in a team play environment. No other choice, but tactical awareness is absolutely goated. Make sure you're focusing those specials, which I'll show on screen now, to get the maximum uptime of voice of command. As I showed with the math before, I like my damage reduction. I like leaning into the base toughness replenishment of my melee weapon of 5%, the replenishment of catch a breath and voice of command. I can stay above that threshold, and between a couple of nodes with very little opportunity cost, really only being out for blood, I find it an effective way to get really tanky. Grenade Veteran demo team, need I say more? This is one of the reasons you can go entire runs without picking up a single grenade, and in the gameplay video I'm going to show, this is with the Ogren rework. My mate Berto wanted to bring a ammo hungry build. He asked if he could, and I'm leaning into that. Again, Demolition team in practical terms leans into the support element of allowing him the resources of grenade pickups, but plays into my carry aspects by generating grenades, which is a damage source. Bring it down. Now, KRAK grenades, something that you need to understand is that blessings on weapons, for the most part, affect dot damage, so bleed, but they don't affect explosion damage. Very few blessings and things actually improve explosion damage compared to bleed damage. Bring It Down is one of the few things that actually improves KRAK grenade damage, which I'll show now. Alright, so with Bring It Down, 6,528. Without bring it down, 5,760. Now the second one is focus target, and I mean obviously the third one is grenade tinkerer. That one's self-explanatory, but just to show focus target now, without, back to that 6,528, and with 7,943. Now I never leave focus target without target down. Going into that support element, born leader. Between 2 points you get damage, stamina, and toughness replenishment. Mwah, chef's kiss. Now going on to the tech points. This is what I took in the gameplay. I took Twin Blast because I was running Bolt Pistol and Reciprocity just to dip into that crit chance, because you have to also understand KRAK grenades are not as spammy as Shredder grenades. You want to throw them with purpose, really target those purple elites, those bulwarks, those monstrosities, or when you're in a hallway. Whereas with Shredder grenades, you get a lot more leniency of when you can really maximize their value. If you don't want to tech into the crit chance, Competitive Urge when active does improve KRAK grenade damage. However, again, there's going to be an RNG aspect. However, unlike Shredder grenades where you're usually getting the majority of the kills, you get less kills with a KRAK grenade build, which means you do actually get more uptime from Competitive Urge. And redirect fire also affects KRAK grenades, just to show you now. So 6,528 without redirect fire. Thank you Twin Blast for cooperating. Now with redirect fire, 6,816, just to show you it does work. So if you don't want to play into the crit chance of the ranged and melee weapons because your KRAK grenades can't crit, Fat Shark, maybe, come on. Competitive Urge and redirect fire are other ways that you can play into KRAK grenades and also help your team. You can also tech into precision strikes. It will have more uptime than reciprocity because it's not reliant on a crit, assuming you're hitting those headshots. This can become very effective on the bolter. You voice of command, the boss gets staggered, you basically get a full clip into the face. If you're weird like me, or you're taking something like the Shockmaw or Shovel, this will play into the high cleave and impact. You can still apply the bleed on those monstrosities, bosses, captains, lieutenants, ogre-sized enemies, and overall it's not bad. When you're combining Serrated Blade with Skull Crusher, with KRAK grenades, it's a great way to put bosses onto a timer, but isn't as required, but I think it's not bad and it's pretty good. Or you can tech back into Out for Blood to play into that toughness replenishment, become tankier, stop yourself from going down as much. Now if I don't tech into Twin Blast and I get 1 extra point, if I'm going the crit variant, I can now go Desperado, or I can go into Reciprocity and redirect fire or Competitive Urge. Or if you're playing on lower difficulty and you don't really need Grenade Tinkerer, you can opt for a bit more balanced shootier playstyle. I'm just showing some options of what you can do, but again for the purpose of showing you what's in the gameplay, I took Grenade Tinkerer, Grenade Tech, and went into Reciprocity. Now in terms of melee weapons, really the only thing that actually affects KRAK grenades is Skull Crusher. So when a boss comes, let's say a Plague Ogre, and we're talking monstrosities because KRAKs don't work that well into captains. There's some weird interactions where it doesn't actually stick to them, despite them being flak and carapace. I don't know why, so maybe Fat Shark needs to look into that. I don't know if that's intended, because if you look at the KRAK grenade tooltip, it should definitely be sticking to flak armored, carapace, and unyielding enemies. And monstrosities count as unyielding, whereas the captains count as flak and carapace, and I'll show the clip from the gameplay now that I'm talking about. So I don't know if that's intended, but it's definitely a reason why the KRAKs are not that good into the captains. If it stuck and it blew up through the shield, that could be an awesome way that would buff KRAK grenades. But going back to the melee weapons, when I take Sunder, I like Flak and Carapace to abuse the Sunder's energized attacks cleaving through Carapace, regardless if it's a light, heavy, or push attack. If I'm taking Brutal Momentum or Slaughterer, I take Flak and Unyielding. And again, go to my ranged or melee tier list videos. I give explanations, breakdowns, and chapters in those videos to make it easier for you. Other weapons that I would recommend, and the reason I recommend Power Sword, is that it allows you to deal with things like rages and crushes without needing to expend crack grenades on them, so you can actually use them on the purple elites and warlocks and bosses to give you a weapon that can both horde clear and deal with single target entities. Another recommendation is going to be the combat knife with uncanny and lacerate if you're not going into any crit chance, or uncanny and flesh terror if you're taking reciprocity and or desperado. Again, put the boss on a timer, use the bleed and uncanny on the purples. Bleed helps out the horde clear, especially on the Mark 6. It's a very generalist all-purpose weapon, and again it goes into not needing serrated blade and putting those important enemies, bosses and purples on a timer. We have the dueling sword, uncanny and riposte or uncanny and thrust, again for the same reasons as the knife. Thrust if you're not a crit focused build or variant, riposte if you are and always take uncanny. This will play heavier into the single target sniping, but will have a bit of a weakness in the horde killing, but usually you can supplement that with your team. And the dueling sword itself has more than enough horde clear to get the job done. And then if you want to get the most value out of crack grenades, I'm going to be recommending the shovel or shock maul. I personally go with the shock maul. For the skull crusher blessing, I personally take opportunist and skull crusher with flak and carapace. If my range weapon and my grenades are to deal with bosses, then you definitely want a way to deal with carapace that's not crack grenades in your build. But more importantly, to show you, skull crusher is one of the few ways to buff explosion damage through weapon blessings. Alright, again 6528. And with skull crusher, 9,600. Now also understand there is a bit of a combo to this, because if you shout then attack and then crack, the skull crusher blessing will time out. Just to show you what I'm talking about. $6,528. So just remember, if you're taking the shock maul or shovel variant, the combo is crack, voice of command into skull crusher to get the extra damage. And one more is the Thunderous and Bloodletting Chain Axe. Brittleness does affect crack grenade damage because unyielding effectively translates to damage reduction. Brittleness and Rending effectively translate to removing damage reduction. The different armor types are just different words for different levels of damage reduction. So to show you, I'm going to apply Thunderous. I'll let the bleed tick down but maintain the Thunderous stacks, and then I'll crack grenade. $7,020. For example, we do 6,528 without rending strikes. 6,610 with rending strikes. And using this Darktide breeds breakdown, I don't know how accurate it is, but it will give you the understanding against range damage. There is a 0.6 damage taken or 40% damage resistance, which is why the brittleness from the Thunderous Chain Axe resulted in more damage on the crack grenade versus the 10% from rending strikes. Now to show you a fun interaction, or rather not so fun, is again I'm going to confirm that brittleness is working for crack grenades through Onslaught and the shovel this time. At a base, 5,760. With some brittleness stacks, 5,904. Now this is where it gets really silly. So 5,760 at a base, but with Uncanny Strike, it's still 5,760. What the fuck's going on there, Fat Shark? So basically this translates to, on my melee tier list video for Grenade Veteran, everything in the S and A tier will affect crack grenades. All or nothing doesn't affect it, so don't worry about that. Now in the video, I'm testing Glory Hunter. Again, I just play with different things to make sure I'm always on top of what I think is as good as possible. But just like all my other videos, reload speed dump stat on the bolt pistol, flak unyielding, puncture lethal proximity. Lethal proximity does affect crack grenade radius, so just to show you. The Crusher survives, but with lethal proximity. Both of them die. And just so you know, crack grenades have two radiuses. The epicenter, which will apply a lot of damage and gets those one shots, and a secondary explosion that applies predominantly stagger, but will typically one shot the trash mobs and usually keep elites and specials alive. Just know that lethal proximity affects both of those. Now again, depending on your melee weapon, different things are going to get different benefit. Shattering impact on both the bolter and plasma have more value because of the crack ramp and the debuff it applies for teammates. I had success with crit chance and shattering impact, although you can go into the standard, gets hot rising heat, gets hot blaze away. These are all good options, but my favorite so far and the most success I've been having has been a shattering impact and puncture bolt gun with flak and unyielding, mobility dump stat. You get the debuff on purples, you put them on a timer with puncture. You can mag dump with the bolt gun. So just to give you an example of what an ideal combo would look like. Now bear in mind, this is a Damnation Psychanium. Havoc modifiers make bosses tankier, but this is not a weakened boss. Just know that the one in front of you has 59,906 HP. And just to show you what your combo should look like in game, you will have no issues controlling the monstrosities and high priority targets in your games with this build. A bunch of purple bulwarks come into a corridor, space out your crack grenades so they don't overlap, get the thunderous bleeding stacks, put them on a timer, really make sure you're focusing those priority targets, play into focus target. And it's for the same reason I would recommend the Hellbore, Flak Carapace or Flak Unyielding. You can replace No Respite for Infernus if you're taking the crit chance. Then as opposed to a bleed, now you've got a burn and the crack grenades and the armor bane, which you can set up in 2 shots for your crack grenades. More or less it translates to everything in the ST is a good choice. As well as the las pistol if you're playing into the crit chance. While it doesn't specifically affect crack grenades for the purpose of the build, the las pistol itself is one of the best boss killers, if not the most consistent best boss killer for ranged weapons in my opinion. It doesn't require a lot of ammo, it has very high crit chance. To make use of the Infernus, a couple of shots transition back to melee. Not a bad option, but you saw the effectiveness of the bolter and the reasons we would take things like Thunderous or just a little bit of rending in this build, but not Uncanny Strike because that shit's trash and doesn't work. For crack grenades specifically, while it's absolutely goated for shredders, it's absolutely trash for crack grenades. Going on to the Curios, I make it simple for all my veteran builds so you can focus on getting different weapons, playing around different things. This Curio setup will work with every single build, and then you can do your own tweaking on what you like. But 2 toughness Curios, 1 stamina Curio, 3 stamina regeneration, 3 toughness Curios, 3 combat ability regeneration. Now that pretty much sums up my crack grenade veteran video, guide build and gameplay. I gave you different options for the melee and ranged weapon and some tech points for this build to succeed. Everyone has different playstyles, but these are the tools that you'll need to have success in your build. play around, test it. In terms of what I'm finding the most success with, it's going to be a Slaughterer or Sunder power sword with flak and unyielding if it's Slaughterer, or flak and carapace with Sunder, with a flak and unyielding shattering impact and puncture bolter. I just feel it covers all the bases. Yes, I'm missing out on the skull crusher potential from the KRAK grenades, but when I don't want to rely on KRAK grenades, I can default back onto these weapons very smoothly and very cleanly to keep a nice healthy gameplay loop. Again, this build is not about topping DPS charts. Think of Chorus Zealot in Havoc 1.0. It's an impact build. You always wanted one on your team, and specifically into Encroaching Gardens in Havoc 2.0, or if you're an Auric player, the 3 veg or monstrosity modifiers, or in general in Havoc because of the new weakened boss spawned rates. KRAK grenades have found a home. There is a place for them, and I do think overall shredders are still the best grenade if you're just to take them into every single game, but specifically into the Encroaching Garden, I've had the most success with KRAK grenades. It more or less shuts down that modifier. A bolt gun ripping into the lieutenants when the shield is down is a great way to just delete one of them, and then the power sword is ready for every occasion. It can deal with hordes, it can deal with mixed hordes, it can deal with elites, it can deal with carapace. That's going to be my recommendation guide. I'll leave you with the gameplay now. I've got a few other videos on the way, and Fat Shark, if you watch this, yes, I'm a collector. Let me buy my veteran stuff. I already had all of this ages ago, and Fat Shark, if you watch this, come on the store, fix it, let's go. Chop chop. I want to bring up another point from my previous video that I'm going to talk about the Darktide store in every single video. Fat Shark, you need to remember that there's a lot of your current player base that have played for a long time, and holy shit, does it feel like shit waiting a year for something to come back and it still hasn't came back and you've got no idea. And like, again, I like my veteran stuff. I'm a collector. I don't like not that I don't like it, I'm not interested in the other classes. I've got the Aquillas ready to go. What are we waiting for? Come on, Fat Shark. I think at times Fat Shark forgets that their community and player base is a little older. It doesn't want to deal with this bullshit. I think it's a little out of touch. Let's get it fixed. Come on, chop chop. Anywho's, I'll leave you a little bit of gameplay. I'll have a separate gameplay video that more or less shows the entire run, but I hope you enjoy. Catch you in the next video. God bless. 07.